Hi, everyone. We'd like to get started, so if you could quickly find a seat. It's almost 11:30. We want to get you out of here as quickly as possible at 12:15 or so. We're going to be talking today about the future of Christ Church, and we're going to open with a prayer, and Lynn's going to read the prayer. This prayer was written for our capital campaign in 2013, and I don't recall who wrote it. Did you write it? Somebody wrote it. Anyway, so this is
the prayer team.
The prayer team.
Committee.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah.
Led by Mary Catan. Good morning, everybody. Hi. Thank you for coming. It's going to be a really interesting presentation, partly because I'm not going to have much to do with it. I'm the junior warden, for those of you who don't know, and I serve on the vestry. And for those of you who don't know what a vestry is, the vestry is equivalent to our board. I'm the vice president, and our friend Dominic Casterly is the senior warden, also known as the president of the board. So to get us started, let's kick it off here with this prayer. So the Lord be with you. Gracious and loving God, you have given us so much in our lives and as a church. We thank you for these gifts and ask that you would make us faithful and generous stewards of them. Let your guidance, wisdom, and inspiration work in us so that we may care for our mission, our facilities, and our future opportunities with energy and commitment. And give us hopeful and loving hearts, we pray, for your tender mercy's sake. Amen.
Thank you, Lynn. Okay. So as I mentioned before, I should say, my name is George Belshaw, and I'm the Director of Advancement and Engagement here at Christ Church. And we've been working on, for a couple of years now, thinking about the future of our parish and how do we lean into the future. So last year was our 275th. This is our 276th year. So we're planning for the next 275 years. So that's the mindset for today. As many of you know, we have seen a lot of growth, a lot of new members. We had approximately 283 new people last year who joined our rolls. We had, over Christmas, we had over about 4,000 people join us, which is a great testament to the work we're doing here at Christ Church. On a regular Sunday, we usually have about roughly 400 and some odd people here on campus for the various services, from the 8 o'clock Messy Church, Joyful Noise, 10 o'clock, Evensong, Compline, and all number of services that we have here. Our nursery school is at capacity, which is wonderful. And actually, the pandemic is one of the best things that happened, believe it or not, to our nursery school, because we have 10 acres. How many nursery schools in town have 10 acres? So the kids could go outside. Our youth programs, Josh right now, who's in Jiminy Peak with a bunch of kids right now, we have about 50 to 60 kids in that program. Our children, Susie leads, 100 or so kids throughout the year who are part of our program. Our music program has about 100 kids. And our men's and women's ministries keep expanding. For example, the Women's Conference, which we've been running for the last 2 years, has been a huge success. It's a new program. Many Bible studies. The Bible Challenge is underway. We have EFM, men's groups, women's groups doing Bible studies as well. The challenge with us today is that the church, our members are different today than they were many years ago, right? There's an old saying that in the church that Christ will come again, but the 1950s won't. And today, within a family, you have two people working. Traditionally, it used to be one, but now it's two because it's expensive. We need two dual incomes in many households. As a result, we have a limited volunteer time. So people have less time to help here on campus, on a church. We're in a very anxious society. Technology is overwhelming us. There's a lot of divisiveness. So people are seeking faith. They're seeking faith in the Episcopal Church. And the wonderful thing about the Episcopal Church is that we are a big tent church. We're worldwide. We're part of the Anglican Communion. We have lots of differing opinions, even within the Anglican Communion. Different parts of the world want to think one way, we think a different way. But the beautiful thing about the Episcopal Church, sorry for the pitch, is that here we all are together, worshiping together, right? We're in fellowship together. And we have the conversation together. So that's the beauty of the Episcopal Church, and people are finding us because of that. So what does this mean for us, for Christ Church? How do we lean into the future? We need to continue to strengthen our children and youth ministries, provide more opportunity there. Obviously, continue more of our Bible studies for adults. Continue continue more fellowship opportunities. Continue to expand and try new forms of worship. Continue to expand our music program to engage more kids and more people who love music. And we need to continue, most important, to serve our community through outreach, pastoral care. How do we do that? How do we do all of that? What we need to do all that, there's a basic rule in the church that for every program leader, they can lead 40 to 50 people. So you think about the music program, we've got about 100 kids in there. So we have 2 leaders of that program primarily. The math works there. So to get more people in, we need more program leadership, more staff. The more staff, the more people we can serve. And as I said before, the 1950s won't come again, but here we are in a building that was built in 1958. So we need to adjust our campus to help facilitate growth. So, how do we get there? There are 2 things that we've been looking at. The first is our endowment, and the other is our campus. The endowment, because we need funds to have a strong staff and run our facility, our campus, our church on a regular basis. The stronger our endowment, the stronger our parishes. That's partly also because philanthropy, I won't get into it, but that's what I do, has changed. And people don't give the same way they used to in the 1950s. In the 1950s, you wrote a check to your church. Now people are writing checks to many different organizations for different reasons. Our endowment is currently about $13 million. We draw about $500,000 or a little bit more per year to help our operating. We really need to double that. We need to get $1 million out of our endowment. And our endowment is not a savings account that we can sort of go grab if you want to do something for fun. Our endowment is the future of our parish. So the stronger our endowment is, the longer our church will thrive. Sorry? About 13 million right now. And there's some other things coming in, so it's called, yeah. So as I have up here, you'll see a healthy endowment supports our operating budget. So a healthy endowment gives us a stronger team, which gives us more opportunity for programming, robust programming. It increases engagement in different ways. Bible studies, for example, women's retreats, et cetera, more children's programming. All of this creates more discipleship, and that's what we are. That's what we do here at church. We create disciples. All of you are disciples of Christ. You take Christ Church, you take Jesus into your life, and you take it into the world, in your workplace, or whatever you do in your life. And that's what we do as a church. We create discipleship. So the stronger our endowment, the more disciples we make. And the more disciples we make, the better our world is. So strengthening endowment is a key piece that we hope to do. We really want to expand the endowment over the next few years as best we possibly can. And that's something we're looking at doing. And how do we do that? Obviously, immediate gifts are helpful. Planned giving. Chip is sitting here, Chip Skinner, who runs our Arbor Society, is a key piece. And within the endowment, there are many ways of endowing positions, for example. We could We can endow, say, the youth minister or children's ministry or director of music or a clergy person that serves seniors or what have you. There are many ways of supporting, creating little funds within our endowment to endow various positions. We can also endow whole programs such as our youth, music, outreach. I mean, how wonderful would it be if we had a very strong endowment around specifically towards our outreach? We could do a tremendous amount with our community, for our community, if we had a very strong endowment that was specifically dedicated to outreach and pastoral care. So there are many things we can do within the scope of an endowment, and endowment really is, strengthening our endowment really is the future. So, so that's one thing we're looking at when we're talking about the future of Christ Church. How do we support our endowment, make it stronger? The other piece is our campus. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to our senior warden, Dominic Casserly, to talk about some ideas that we have and we've poken around to see what could work in terms of creating a campus that really helps facilitate our programming. Dominic.
George, thank you. So what I'm going to show you are some ideas of how the campus could evolve. First of all, these are ideas. These are not written in stone. They are not decided, they're not decisions. On the other hand, they do build on many years of work. In fact, they refer back to a master plan for the whole campus that was undertaken in 2003. And then in the last couple of years, we've been working, or 18 months, we've been working with an architectural firm called Centerbrook, who've been helping us think through how things might evolve in line with that master plan of 2003 and the evolving needs of our parish, the evolving needs of our missions. And as George said, many of these buildings we have are old. In fact, you're looking at some of the newest, the ones we're in now. They weren't necessarily built or designed for what we need their usage today. So we're trying to evolve them to reflect the realities of what we need. The other need we had in hiring an architect was to make sure any plans we had were actually practical. Planning needs, heating needs, engineering needs. We had to make sure what we were actually thinking of doing would meet code and could actually practically be implemented. But they are ideas, and we want your input and reaction to them. We did this about a year ago, some of you will remember. Lucy Rinaldi and I stood up here in front of you and did some version of this, and as a result of your input and comments, the ideas that then existed have evolved. So this chart I'm going to come back to again and again, so let's just focus on it for a second. It is a top-down view of our campus. We are standing, well, I'm standing about here. I can't remember which end I am. I'm probably, well, either side. I'm here, I think. This is the parish hall. This here is the, you'll see later, but that's the corridor. I'm going to take you through various parts of the campus, but you'll see this chart coming back again and again. The first one we're actually going to talk about is what is called the parish house, which is in the middle of the cloister. Many of you will have been in there. There are meetings often in that building, particularly on the ground floor. And we have quite exciting plans we would like to suggest to everybody for the parish house. And that is to turn it into something. This is a view of it, the first floor of it. But we basically want to turn it into the Music and Youth Center. So this would house our music program, which at the moment is somewhat squashed in over there, and also be a new youth center for our youth program, the two brought together. This is a picture of the ground floor of that building, as it would be. It would have offices for Jamie and for the youth program downstairs, and it would have offices for Johnny and an assistant, and also have a meeting area on the left and where we would keep and store all our music. The top floor would be a rehearsal space. There would be an elevator to get people up to the top floor, which doesn't exist today. And it would proper heating and ventilation. It doesn't have air conditioning, which means it's basically unusable in the height of the summer. But this would become a wonderful rehearsal space or meeting space or small concert space that could also be used by our youth program when they wanted a larger space. But their space would mainly be in the basement, which would be, as you can see, a youth group space, and also some rehearsal spaces or small meeting spaces in the basement of that building. This is a building which could go from relatively light usage today to being very, very heavily utilized, and would also be, have office space for our youth leaders and our music leaders, which we think would be very important going forward. So that is building number one, which is the parish house, and the creation of a proper music center and youth center. Now I'm going to talk about the beautiful building we're in now. There is a groundswell of those who would like to retain it exactly as it is today, and the two of them are meeting in a corner over there. This building has the advantages of being large and a long list of disadvantages. The biggest disadvantage being it is large, so you can't have small group meetings in it. It's very, very difficult. And what we want to do is to turn it into the Center for Community and Engagement. And the important thing is that we would make this building much, much more flexible than it is today. It would become a community center, an engagement center, something also we could hire out. We often get people who come here who want to have a wedding at Christ Church. They want to have a reception. They would like to have the reception afterwards on site. They come and they see this. And they're not so excited, perhaps, about having this for their wedding reception. We want to make this a more attractive space, which could be used both by the parish, by members of the parish who want to have events here, like a wedding, and we could also hire out, which we do today. We rent this space out to outsiders. We think we would have a larger group of people being interested in it. But as you can see, we also, at that end, want to have more flexibility for flexible rooms. And this gives you just some ways in which this space could be set up. It could be set up for worship. As we know, it is used for messy church, and we're not suggesting that should stop, but it would be a much more attractive place to have worship, and it could be, the seating could be much more varied. You can see in the middle, we have an example of 275 seats we think we could fit in, or round tables on the right, about 128 seats, or we could have just it for smaller group meetings. So it just becomes a much, much more flexible and much more attractive space than it is today. Here's a view of what it might look like set up for, a big meeting, 250 people perhaps. With what you see in the background is the small group meeting spaces, which would be over there. This is it set up for, completely cleared out, all those chairs gone, and just set up for small meeting groups who might want to meet. And here it is set up for about 120 people, a bit like we are today. But as you can start to see, the roof would be completely different, the walls would be different, but critically, we're not knocking down this building. That becomes extremely expensive. So we're improving the building, making it much more flexible, more attractive. Again, there are about 4 people meeting elsewhere who want to retain the floor. And if you would like to join them, they would be happy to talk to you. So imagine a much more attractive building for meeting. Meeting space, Small group meeting space is something that the campus does lack. We're adding some here, hopefully, if this is possible. But another space we would like to evolve is the mezzanine of Dogwood, the second floor of Dogwood, which, as you know, is actually one of the most attractive rooms in the whole campus. It has extraordinary views. But it's sort of betwixt and between at the moment. It's partly a bookstore, partly somewhere you can go and get a cup of coffee. And an idea is to turn it much more into a space where you could actually have meetings or small group meetings. You could have a table in the middle, which could be taken down if you wanted to, or you could have small group meetings. And we would definitely want to retain the coffee bar, the coffee space in the top. But if you go up there today on your way, having bought 7 or 8 books downstairs, if you could then make your way upstairs, you will recognize what a beautiful building, room this is, and we should just find ways to use it more for gatherings. This is probably one of the most interesting changes, potentially, which is the way we used to enter this church was off Putnam. You drove along Putnam, you parked on Putnam, and you walked in the front doors of the church, right? Unfortunately, that stopped in the 1960s when the town said no parking on Putnam, right? It's a major street, right? So suddenly we had our car park, and most of us enter the church into a corridor, which is not the most enlivening way to enter a building, right? And so it is also not a very good space for gathering, right? It's a bit of a traffic jam often there. So what we would like to do with that corridor there is to make it basically the front lobby of the church and make it much bigger, much bigger. It would become a lobby rather than a hallway. So think of it as at least twice as deep. It would have a reception desk. So there you see, to the left is outside. The reception desk, a place to sit, and those 2 doors on the right at the back are these doors here into the parish hall. So it would extend and become a much deeper space. So you could get directly from the lobby into the parish hall. You'd have a proper reception place. And actually, having a proper reception desk is getting important for security. At the moment, people walk in that hallway and there's no one checking who they are or anything. So we would basically extend the hallway this way out into what is now slightly open space and make it about 2 or 3 times the size. This is a top-down view of it. And the car park is to the top of this picture. But it becomes a much more attractive way of coming into the campus. I want to just have you look at what's at the bottom of that picture, because the other thing we're slightly struggling with is space for small children and parents during services. We sort of have them off in the family room round the corner, but we think it might be better, which is a bit hidden away, might be better to have that space in that building where I have that arrow, which would be, here we go, a children's center, which would be right off that new entrance hall. So you could see, it would be glass, you could easily see where the children were, and it would be a much more attractive space to take children to during service. Indeed, the preschool has also thought about whether it might be an interesting space for them to use in some ways during the week. So we're not suggesting that it would only be used on a Sunday morning. Linked to that are all the offices. If you've been back to the offices, Dickens would be proud. We have our long-suffering staff who live in that world, but at some point we have to do something. Obviously, I'll be clear, it's not, even though we love this and just modernize it. Little meeting rooms for the staff. They're constantly always having to meet in corridors. So we just want to modernize the office space for staff, which would be behind that new children's space. I'm nearly done, you'll be glad to know. The final building we need to think about is called the Annex. The Annex is if you're standing on Putnam looking at the church, and I told you the blue building on the right was the parish hall, which we want to turn into the music center and the youth center. The one on the right of that horseshoe is called the Annex. And the Annex is a building in which we have Suzuki, the music program meets there. We have a number of apartments in there. And we have a rather ghastly basement. You go down there, it's quite scary if you go down to the basement. We think this is an opportunity to use that space more efficiently going forward. And I have to go back and forward again. And we have, these are the 3 floors of the building, and we think we want to use the Annex for meeting rooms, continued housing, and for a dedicated space for AA to meet. AA now meets mostly in the parish house, which we want to turn into the youth and music center. And I think we would all agree it would not be really very appropriate to have AA meeting at the same place where our music program and our youth center is. So we need to find a dedicated space for where AA can meet on campus. And we think that is the basement of that building. And it's a reason to basically renovate the basement of that building. And it then becomes a dedicated space for AA. And we have to deal with the basement anyway. It's quite ghastly. We have an option for the ground floor. We could either have more apartments, which are always in demand for staff and for hiring staff into very expensive Greenwich when they're coming from outside Greenwich. Having dedicated housing makes it possible for us to go to places and hire people that otherwise we wouldn't be able to do. So potentially adding a couple more apartments on the bottom on the ground floor, or meeting rooms. And you can go either way. And the cost difference from a point of view of the architects is not significant. We just have to decide the usage we prefer. And then the top floor remains more the apartments we have today. So that is the end, I think, George, of the slides about the ideas. And George is going to explain the process we're going to go through, because we want to get your reactions to what George talked about at the beginning of this presentation and these ideas on these slides. George.
Thank you, Dominic. So lots of ideas to consider. And what we'd like you to do on your table is a sheet and a pencil. If somebody at your table could be record your thoughts. So I'd love you all to sit at your table, take say 10 minutes or so, and there's some questions on here. If you could talk about these amongst yourselves, and then somebody write them down, and we're going to collect them afterwards, and we're going to use this as a way of continuing to discern how we move forward with all of this. So if you could take the next 10 minutes or so to review these questions, that would be terrific.